Raw this past Monday night was live from Memphis, Tennessee, the King's hometown. Big story coming out of that show was the Wrestlemania main event shakeup. Daniel Bryan, his Occupy Raw segment. Forget all the hijack Raw nonsense from Chicago the week before. This segment was proof that if enough people feel that strongly about something or someone, they can make a difference in terms of the decisions that are made. In this case, the fans helped get the WrestleMania main event changed. That's a pretty big deal. And it's a change for the better because, heel, boo this, deal with it Batista against heel, monotone, slow and boring Randy Orton would have been a disaster as a WrestleMania main event. They really had no choice but to make a change once it became clear that the fan support for Bryan was not going away. The fan support for Bryan could have collapsed 3 months ago the way they booked this guy. But it didn't. They stayed the course. They stuck with him. And, once that became obvious and became obvious that Batista was not going to be welcomed back with open arms the way they probably thought he would be, it's hilarious to me that there are people out there who honestly believe this was WWE's plan all along. Oh, you see, it's the slow burn. As though their plan, when they brought Batista back after 4 years away from WWE, and they signed him to a fat six-figure contract, I'm sure, was to have him win the Royal Rumble and then go to WrestleMania in a triple threat match. Right. That was the original plan. These people make me laugh. They really do. Delusional is what they are. Plans change. Okay, plans change. Sometimes for the better. This is one of those times. And for me, it's been fun as a fan to follow this whole story that really goes back to WrestleMania 28 in Miami, when Bryan got beaten 18 seconds, and the next night on Raw, that crowd, that's where this whole supposed yes movement started to take off. And to follow along from that, his feud with Punk for the title in 2012, teaming with Kane and doing the comedy stuff for a while, to where he is today, it's really cool to see. You can see the ascent of his character, and believe me, his character didn't go from where he was 2 years ago to where he is now because there was some grand master plan. They loved Daniel Bryan so much, and they saw him as, future main event WrestleMania World Champion material that they hatched this great plan. No, I mean, the fans took to him. There's something about the guy that they like, and it's not just people that knew him from the independent scene, obviously. There's some kind of likable characteristic about the guy, whether it's he's a great wrestler, he seems like a nice guy. Maybe there's a lot of female fans who started watching the product through Total Divas who came to like him because he's with Brie. I don't know. Everyone has their reasons for why they like the guy. But whatever it is, clearly there's something about him that they liked. And the fans spoke up, and they were vocal, and they kept chanting his name, and they kept chanting yes. And at some point, the company had no choice but to say, all right, I guess we should probably do something with the guy. So hats off to everybody who helped him kind of get to where he is now, because without that fan support, believe me, this guy, he'd be doing okay, but I don't think Daniel Bryan would be anywhere close to where he is right now if it wasn't for the fan support. And don't believe for a second that he would have gotten to the position he's in now because it was the plan. Because those people are full of shit. So it's going to be Bryan against Evolution, essentially, at WrestleMania. What happens now is that Bryan goes one-on-one with Triple H. They had the segment on Raw where all the fans, and they weren't really fans. I mean, there were maybe a handful of fans, like Rick the Sign guy I saw was in there. But apparently it was a bunch of WWE employees. They dressed up in Daniel Bryan shirts. And so the visual was great. They had the whole ring. At first, when Bryan started bringing people in the ring before they came back from commercial, it was like a handful of people. It was like, ugh, this is pathetic. When they came back, the entire ringside area was just flooded with people. And Bryan refused to leave the ring. He said, wrestlers come out here and they say, I'm not leaving until I get what I want. And he said, that's not going to be the case. I am not leaving this ring until I get what I want. And they come back and it's just this sea of people out there. And Triple H and Stephanie come out. They go back and forth. So Bryan gets his match with Triple H at WrestleMania. And I like that because at least it's a match we haven't seen before. Triple H and Bryan is fresh. It has been building for many months. remember when they did Big Show and Randy Orton at Survivor Series, that was a match that nobody wanted to see. They did a good job of building the Big Show up as this great big babyface. People were going nuts for the guy, but you thought, okay, they're building to Triple H and Big Show maybe at Survivor Series. People want to see Big Show knock him out. Instead, they had him knock Triple H out on Raw, and he wrestled Orton, and nobody gave a shit, and Survivor Series bombed. But they've built up these different things for Triple H that hasn't really amounted to anything. They were building to Punk, but Punk left. So now we're finally going to get the match between the two of them. And it's a match that has meaning. This match has a purpose. If they were just going to do Triple H and Bryan at WrestleMania, it would have been a letdown, because that's not the match people wanted to see. Even when Bryan came out a few weeks ago and he said, I want to meet Triple H one-on-one at WrestleMania, it kind of got an okay response, but you could tell that's not the match that people wanted to see. They just kind of went along with it because they like Bryan, and it's like, all right, well, okay, he wants us to cheer for the match. Yay, okay, great, Triple H and Bryan. That's not the match they wanted to see. The way they've built this story up since August, the only payoff here is that the guy gets a fair shake at the title and he wins the championship. So now at least this match has some kind of purpose to it. And Bryan is playing the Bret Hart role from WrestleMania 10. He's wrestling twice in one night. Unlike the Bret match with Owen, which was a great match, and I guess it set up Owen as the number one contender, but that match really didn't have any meaning at that pay-per-view. Bret lost, came back later in the night, won the title. Here, Bryan has to win. Either he wins or goes home. So this match all of a sudden has drama. It has purpose to it. If he can get past Triple H, he gets inserted into the Batista-Orton match and he makes it a three-way. And I am not a fan of having a three-way or a four-way for the WrestleMania main event, but I'll make an exception this time because it makes sense, and I like the drama of it. So it's fine. It actually makes total sense for them to do it this way. One thing they have to be careful of, I watched the Raw Backstage Pass show, and Renee Young had a backstage interview with Daniel Bryan, where he went off on this rant comparing the Yes Movement to people rebelling against corporations that pollute the planet and the environment and all these different things that I know are near and dear to Bryan in real life, but that's a dangerous thing to be doing. People don't want to see political activist Daniel Bryan. They want to see Daniel Bryan kicking people's heads in and throwing his index finger up in the air. Stone Cold Steve Austin was himself with the volume turned up, right? He said that in interviews before. But it's not like he came out on Raw back in his prime talking about stomping a mud hole in people who supported gay marriage. Like you would think a beer-drinking, deer-hunting redneck from Texas might just do back in that day. Okay, and I'm not saying that was or is Austin's actual position on gay marriage. I'm just using that as an example. Point being, that would have turned off a shitload of fans, and that's not what you want. So they should be careful, because I could see that being a turnoff for a lot of fans. Maybe he just got carried away and went off on his own and started saying all these different things, because he's talked about that in radio interviews. He used to eat vegan, and he supports the environment and all these different things, and that's great. That's great for him, but I just don't think wrestling fans care. I don't think wrestling fans want to hear that in a promo, and I would hate for that to suddenly turn people off to the guy. Just keep doing what you're doing. That seems to be working pretty well. Speaking of fans, there is a thread on our Facebook group page, or there was, about hate for Daniel Bryan sprouting up online. I haven't seen any of this hate myself, other than the usual people who just don't like the guy, but I haven't seen this in the last week or two, this big rush of, anti-Daniel Bryan support. Apparently it's in the comment sections of some YouTube videos and in a few other places. It's like, really? YouTube? Have you seen the comments on YouTube? You're basing this on seeing negative comments on YouTube? These guys, if 100 vaginas fell from the sky and found their way to their crotch, they'd still find something to complain about. I mean, come on. This is nonsense. I wouldn't call that a scientific sample of how fans really feel about the guy. Some people will just never be happy. That's just the way it is. They cheer and they cheer and they cheer for a guy and they shout his name as loud as they can and they complain he's not getting a push. And then finally when he does and the machine starts to get behind them, oh, this guy is stale, he's boring, they're shoving him down our throats, he's sold out. I think it's some kind of weird brain disorder these people suffer from that just prevents them from feeling emotions like joy and satisfaction.